A wealthy woman was walking down a busy avenue when her purse was suddenly snatched by a street boy. At first, her anger was intense, but upon discovering the reason behind the boy's desperation, a wave of compassion overwhelmed her. Now she found herself questioning, how could she have been so blind to the struggles surrounding her luxurious life? In that moment, a new mission emerged, to transform the pain of the situation into hope and change, not just for the boy, but for many others who, like him, faced invisible battles. Jessica was a successful woman, a true force of nature in the business world. Leading a chain of renowned stores that spanned various cities and countries, she had become a reference in the industry. The windows of her stores were true spectacles, filled with fashion pieces that attracted glances and admirers. With every new launch, the media praised her as the fashion muse, and her appearances at gala events were eagerly anticipated. She wore elegant clothes, always with a charming smile that left everyone around her spellbound. However, behind this glamorous facade lay a dark side that few knew about. While Jessica enjoyed the bright lights of the spotlight and the applause, deep within her heart echoed a profound loneliness. It was as if with each new achievement, she drifted further away from the people who truly mattered. Her life seemed perfect in the eyes of others, but at night, when the lights went out and she found herself alone in her luxurious apartment, reality became oppressive. Jessica sat on her white leather sofa, gazing out the enormous window that offered a stunning view of the illuminated city. The beauty of the landscape couldn't dispel the feeling of emptiness that accompanied her. What was the point of all her success if, in reality, no one seemed to truly know her? People approached her because of her social status, her influence and her wealth, but few cared to know who she really was. No one asked how she was or what made her happy. It was a vicious cycle. She surrounded herself with admirers, yet felt trapped in a bubble, isolated from the real world. As days passed, this loneliness became a constant companion, a weight that couldn't be bought with any amount of money. Sometimes, Jessica found herself wondering how nice it would be to have someone to share her deepest thoughts, insecurities and fears with. She remembered her college days when she had friends who understood her without needing status or material possessions. But now, those memories seemed distant, as if they belonged to another life. Parties and social events became a stage where Jessica played the role of a powerful woman. She smiled, danced, and chatted with others, but deep within her soul, sadness consumed her. Sometimes, she looked in the mirror and wondered if there was something wrong with her. How was it possible that even surrounded by people, she felt so empty? The glamour of her public life contrasted with the grief she felt for a genuine connection. When the day ended and she lay down, tears mingled with unfulfilled dreams. She wished someone would see beyond her image, beyond what she represented to the world. Jessica desperately wanted to be seen as a person, not just as a public figure or a successful businesswoman. This longing grew with each passing day, making her soul feel heavier and her mind more confused. And so, as the smiles and applause echoed around her, Jessica continued to struggle against loneliness, becoming increasingly aware that true happiness did not lie in possessions but in the human connections she so desperately craved. She wondered if she would ever find someone who loved her for who she was, not for what she had. This question lingered, like a shadow, during the long solitary nights of her successful life. Jessica was about to discover that in a world so filled with superficiality, sometimes it takes unexpected experiences to remind us of the true value of life and human relationships. And this journey was about to begin in a way she could never have imagined. It was a sunny afternoon, and the sun's rays filtered through the trees along the busy avenue. Jessica walked slowly, her steps rhythmically aligned with the bustling sounds of the boardwalk filled with life. The aroma of fresh coffee from nearby cafes mixed with the fragrance of flowers adorning the sidewalks. The laughter and animated conversations of the people around her created a murmur that, in theory, should have felt welcoming. However, for Jessica, this urban melody sounded distant, almost like a song playing in the background while she was lost in her own thoughts. As she observed the people, Jessica noticed a group of friends at a cafe, sharing stories and smiles, their eyes sparkling with happiness. A mother pushed a stroller, and the little one laughed as a dog chased a ball. She wondered what it was like to have that genuine connection with others, that joy that seemed to slip through her fingers, even amidst her success. The interactions around her made her more acutely aware of her own loneliness. Despite achieving so much in her professional life, there was something missing in her heart. She began to reflect on her journey, recalling the sleepless nights dedicated to work and the difficult decisions that had led her to the top. Jessica was admired for her class, elegance, and entrepreneurial vision. People often approached her at events, eager to snap a selfie or ask for advice on fashion and business. Yet behind the flashes and applause, She wondered if anyone truly knew her. Would those around her see her true self if she didn't have the reputation of a successful woman? Loneliness gripped Jessica like a persistent shadow, always by her side, even when she was surrounded by admirers. She felt that the mask she wore protected her, but also isolated her. The truth was that in her interactions, she didn't feel fully seen. There was a burning desire within her to be understood for who she really was, far removed from the labels of wealth and prestige. What would happen if one day all of that disappeared? Would people still value her? Or would she simply become another forgotten figure in a world where status was everything? With these thoughts, Jessica decided to stop at a bench under a tree. The frenetic movement around her contrasted with the silence she sought. There, with the gentle breeze caressing her face, she allowed herself to feel the weight of loneliness. Memories of happy moments from the past, when she had real friends to share laughter and tears with, flooded her mind. She remembered the deep conversations, the inside jokes, and the warm hugs that she missed so much. Jessica closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to find some clarity amidst the emotional whirlwind. She wished people could see beyond her public image, that they could glimpse the woman behind the success, a dreamer yearning for love and connection. With each breath, she reflected on how she could reverse the situation, how she could find people who valued her for who she was, not for what she had achieved. And so, amid the bustle of the avenue, Jessica began to chart a new path for her life, one that might lead her to rediscover the joy and connection she so desperately sought. She knew she was only beginning a profound and meaningful journey, and that sunny afternoon would become a milestone in her quest for authenticity and true happiness. Suddenly, amidst the frenetic movement of the avenue, a small barefoot boy named Medingo leaped out from around a corner. With the agility of a cat and an expression that mixed fear and determination, he rushed toward Jessica. In a moment of desperation, he tugged at her bag with unexpected strength. The act was so quick that Jessica barely had time to react. The bag, a stylish designer piece that she carried with such pride, seemed to float through the air as Medingo ran with it, her heart racing a mile a minute. For Jessica, time seemed to freeze. She stood frozen, her eyes wide, her mind trying to process what had just happened. Adrenaline coursed through her veins like lightning, and an overwhelming sense of shock washed over her. The avenue, once alive with activity and noise, appeared to silence for a brief moment, as if the world was holding its breath, watching the scene unfold. The laughter and chatter of people around her became a distant echo, a parallel reality that did not include her. Jessica found herself trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, disbelief, anger, and a wave of vulnerability that hit her unexpectedly. What just happened? How could this happen to me? She thought as her gaze followed the boy, who was now quickly retreating, his small legs running as fast as they could. The image of the boy, thin and unprotected, starkly contrasted with the luxurious environment surrounding her. Medingo seemed like a lost spirit searching for something more, and she couldn't understand how he had reached this point. Part of Jessica wanted to scream, to demand that someone do something, that the police be called. But another part held her back. A tightness in her heart, an echo of empathy, began to blossom within her. As Medingo disappeared into the crowd, a question began to resonate in her mind. What could have led that boy to steal? Jessica looked at the bag now out of reach, and remembered everything that was inside it, not just material possessions, but symbols of her life, the phone that connected her to the business world, the lipstick she always wore to important meetings, and even a letter she kept as a talisman from a time when she felt happier. Yet deep down, she felt there was something more profound, something she still hadn't grasped. With a sudden determination, she decided that she wouldn't let this go unanswered. If life had taught her anything, it was that every moment, even the most challenging ones, carried a lesson. Heart racing, Jessica made an unexpected move. She started running after the boy. The need to understand his story, to see beyond the desperate act he had committed, overwhelmed her. As she ran, Jessica realized that each step she took was not just about recovering her bag, but also about understanding the pain that Medingo carried. Thus, the chase down the avenue was not merely about a theft, but an unexpected encounter between two lonely souls, each struggling in their own way in a world that often felt cold and indifferent. Jessica refused to let the incident pass unnoticed. With her heart pounding in her chest and adrenaline coursing through her veins, she made a quick and unexpected decision. Without a second thought, she began to chase the boy. The movement was instinctive, a response to an impulse that went beyond the simple need to recover her bag. There was something deeper at play, a need to understand. As Medingo distanced himself, running like a frightened rabbit, Jessica wondered how someone so young could find themselves in such a desperate situation. Her feet pounded against the hot pavement of the avenue, and the crowd around her became a blur of faces and voices. The feeling of being surrounded by so many people yet feeling so alone haunted her. How could a small boy be so lost? The mix of emotions inside her was intense and conflicting. The anger at being robbed pulsed like a drum in her heart, but it quickly transformed into compassion. What had driven that boy to do something so risky and desperate? Jessica recalled moments from her own childhood, when she felt lonely, even surrounded by friends and family. She knew what it was like to carry an invisible weight, and now she saw that weight manifesting in Mandingo, in the form of an action that defied expectations. As she ran, her mind wandered. He must have a reason, something that led him to this desperate act, she thought. The boy was not just a thief, he was a reflection of all the injustices in the world. The image of him, panting and desperate, hit her like a wave. The desperation was palpable, almost tangible. Jessica closed the distance between them, her legs burning as she followed, her breathing quickening. The boy was pulling away, but she was not willing to give up. Determination overtook her. Yes, she needed to recover her bag, but more than anything, she needed to understand. She shouted, her voice echoing through the crowded avenue, "Wait!" But her words seemed to get lost in the chaos of the city. He didn't stop. The distance between them grew, but Jessica didn't let it deter her. Every step she took was a step toward an answer. What was behind that impulsive action? Anger and compassion intertwined within her like a complex dance. Jessica knew she had to catch up to him. The boy needed to know that there was someone willing to listen to his story, that there was more to life than the struggle for survival. And deep down, perhaps she needed that too. Someone who could see beyond the surface, who understood the pain and emptiness that accompanied her life of success. Finally, after what felt like minutes of running, Jessica saw Mandingo stop. He was leaning against a wall, his small back hunched under what seemed to be the weight of the entire world. He was panting, his breath short and rapid, and it was at that moment that Jessica noticed the expression on his face, not the defiant look of a criminal, but one of desperation and need. A look that cried out for help. Mandingo abruptly stopped, leaning against a cold, dirty wall, as heavy breaths escaped his chest. His small shoulders trembled, not just from exhaustion, but from a deep, almost palpable fear. He could barely hold his own weight, and the world around him seemed to spin. The weight of his actions pressed down on him like a dark cloud obscuring the sunlight. After a frantic chase, Jessica finally reached him, her lungs burning and her heart racing. "What you did was wrong," Jessica exclaimed, her voice trembling between indignation and concern. The words burst forth like an explosion, a mix of frustration and an urgent need to be heard. "You stole from me, and I'm calling the police now if you don't give back my bag." The threat hung in the air, heavy as a storm about to break. Mandingo lifted his eyes, and what Jessica saw there paralyzed her. The boy's gaze was not that of an arrogant criminal, it was one of absolute despair. His eyes, normally bright and full of life, were now dull and tired, as if they bore the weight of an entire world. Jessica felt a wave of emotions. The anger that had driven her to this point began to dissipate, giving way to a deeper understanding. She noticed there was something more behind Mandingo's actions, a motive that transcended the act of stealing. Her voice, which had previously resonated like a confrontational shout, now sounded almost like a whisper of curiosity. "Why did you do this?" Jessica asked, trying to soften her tone. The boy didn't respond immediately. Instead, he let his shoulders sag even lower, as if every word that left his mouth was a burden he couldn't bear. I just needed help," he finally murmured, his voice so low it almost got lost in the city's buzz around them. "My sister is sick. We have no food, we have nothing. I don't know what to do." The confession fell upon Jessica like a raindrop on a calm surface, creating ripples of compassion. She looked at the boy, truly looked, and saw not just a thief, but a child lost in a cruel world. Mandingo was not just a street kid, he was a brother, a protector, doing what he could to care for those he loved. "You didn't have to steal, Mandingo," Jessica replied, her words now filled with empathy. "If you had asked for help, I could have helped." Mandingo's eyes sparkled with a mix of hope and disbelief. For him, the idea of receiving help seemed so far away, so impossible. He had always believed that the world was against him, that there was no place for people like him in society, that success was a privilege he would never know. Jessica realized that the boy's story was a window into the pains that so many people faced in the shadows of the city. The pain of hunger, the anguishing struggle against loneliness, and the desperate search for hope. She remembered her own struggles, the moments when she felt lost and had no one to reach out to. "Come on," she said, gesturing for him to get up. "Let's find your sister. We can get help, I promise." Medingo hesitated, glancing at the bag Jessica had tried to reclaim. But in that split second, something inside him changed. Hope began to flicker amidst the darkness. He didn't know if he could trust her, but he knew he was tired of fighting alone. "Would you do that for me?" he asked, the vulnerability in his voice breaking Jessica's heart. She nodded, her determination renewed. The connection that was beginning to form between them was proof that even in the darkest situations, the light of empathy and kindness could still shine. And so together, they took the first step toward a new path. Medingo leaned against the wall, panting and with his heart racing. The adrenaline was still coursing through his veins, but the reality of his actions began to weigh on him like an anchor at the bottom of the sea. He looked into Jessica's eyes, and the anguish in his gaze was palpable. It was a look that spoke of despair and a life filled with struggles. With a choked voice, trembling with emotion, he pleaded, "Please don't call the police." The words came out as a broken whisper, laden with a weight that Jessica never imagined a boy so young could bear. "I didn't mean to steal from you. My sister is sick, and we have nothing to eat or any medicine. I don't know what to do." The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them in that tense moment. Jessica stood frozen, her heart racing in response to Medingo's heartfelt plea. The bright lights of the city and the sounds of people around them became distant, like echoes from a world to which she no longer belonged. She looked at the boy, noticing every detail on his face, the way his brows furrowed with worry, the tears threatening to slip down his dirty cheeks. Jessica had never encountered anything like this before. Always surrounded by people who admired her for her success and status, she now found herself facing the harsh reality of a boy's life, who had so much more to lose than just a simple theft. "Medingo," Jessica began, her voice softer, almost like a touch. "I didn't know. No one ever told me your story." She felt a wave of compassion flood her heart. The hardness she had felt over the years, the loneliness that followed her even when surrounded by others, now seemed insignificant in the face of the boy's suffering. Medingo's life was not just a series of bad choices, it was a struggle for survival, for protecting his sister, and for seeking a better future. Medingo, with his head down, looked at the ground covered in trash and debris, as if the answers to all his problems lay there. He felt small and powerless, a lost boy in a world that didn't seem to have space for him. The despair in his eyes was a silent cry for help, and for a brief moment, Jessica remembered when she herself felt invisible, trapped in a world that valued her only for what she had. "You don't have to go through this alone," Jessica said, now feeling a genuine connection with the boy. "If you tell me what you need, maybe I can help. You don't have to be afraid of me." Medingo's eyes lit up slightly, as if a small spark of hope had ignited amid his despair. Jessica realized that despite her own internal battles, she had the power to change someone's life in that moment. It could be a chance for a new beginning for both of them. "My sister, she's had a fever for days. We have no food at home, and I don't know what to do. I've tried to work, but no one gives me a chance." He hesitated, swallowing hard before continuing. "I just wanted something for her. I didn't want to hurt you." Jessica felt a lump in her throat. The innocence of the child seeking help touched a deep place within her. She remembered her own childhood, the dreams she had, and the hardships she faced to get to where she was. It was as if the universe had conspired for them to meet there, in that moment, on a busy avenue, surrounded by the indifference of the city. "Let's find your sister," Jessica decided, her heart pounding. "And afterward, we can think about how to help you find a job. No one should have to go through this alone." Medingo looked at her, disbelief mixed with a spark of hope. He had never imagined that someone like Jessica, a woman who seemed so far removed from his reality, could genuinely care. And in that moment, while the city continued to whirl around them, a new friendship was about to blossom, defying the adversities and barriers life had imposed on both of them. As Jessica watched Medingo, the dilemma before her felt as heavy as a storm forming on the horizon. She had two options. One would lead her to justice, to the safety of her belongings and the momentary satisfaction of doing what society expected. The other, however, pulled her toward a more uncertain path, one that involved understanding and compassion. Doubt consumed her, and the anger she initially felt at being robbed began to evaporate, giving way to a wave of empathy that surprised her. Jessica remembered how she felt throughout her brilliant career, surrounded by people who admired her for her position and lifestyle. She had it all: money, fame, and prestige. But at the same time, she carried a deep and inescapable loneliness, a loneliness that accompanied her even amid the bright lights of the city. How could she care so much about a bag that represented status while a fragile life stood before her, pleading for help? She looked at Madingo, a boy who, at just a few years old, seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was so desperate, so vulnerable, and his situation resonated in her heart like a sad melody. The way his hands trembled, the way he leaned against the wall, almost as if he were bracing for the worst. It was an image that struck her deeply, and for a brief moment, Jessica found herself reflecting on her own struggles. Who really needs help here? She thought, as the inner voice that guided her began to question. What did it mean to be successful if she couldn't make a difference in the life of someone who truly needed it? It was a call from her own conscience, a reminder that true greatness wasn't measured by material possessions, but by how one could impact the lives of others. Madingo, still breathing heavily, looked at her with fragile hope, as if he were waiting for her to decide his fate. What would happen to him if she called the police? Would he become just another statistic, another child thrown into the cold machinery of the system? Jessica couldn't imagine being part of that cycle, that indifference that so often dominated society. With a tight heart, she remembered a moment from her own childhood, when in a time of hardship, someone reached out to help her. That person asked for nothing in return, they simply offered compassion. That act made her feel seen, important, and loved. Now, she was faced with another opportunity to replicate that kindness, to become a light in someone else's darkness. Jessica looked deeply into Madingo's eyes, where hope and despair intertwined. The shine in his eyes, which had previously been filled with fear, was now beginning to reveal a subtle confidence. She couldn't turn her back on what was happening. The boy's life was precious, and somehow, she could make a difference. With a decision made, she felt a new purpose pulsing within her. It's going to be okay, Madingo. Her voice was firm but gentle. We're going to figure this out. You and your sister don't have to go through this alone. In that moment, Jessica realized that what was at stake wasn't just her purse or her reputation, but something much more significant, the chance to transform Madingo's life and his sister's. The decision wouldn't be easy, but the desire to help was now as clear as the sun shining that afternoon. She reached out to the boy, offering not just support, but also a path to a better future. Jessica knew that by making this choice, she was opening her heart to a new possibility, not just for Madingo but also for herself. The road ahead might be filled with uncertainties, but that was where true connections and the most compelling stories began to unfold. She allowed herself to dream of a new kind of life, one where solidarity and empathy were more valuable than any material possession. In a moment of clarity that illuminated her heart like a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds, Jessica made a choice that would change the course of their lives. She looked deeply into Madingo's eyes, realizing that more than a thief, he was a lost, desperate, and fragile child seeking a thread of hope in a world that seemed so cruel. Instead of succumbing to the impulse to call the police, something within her rose up, pulsing with an unwavering desire to help. Let's work this out together, Madingo. She spoke, her voice soft and filled with empathy. Come with me. I can help you and your sister. The words, simple and direct, hung in the air between them like a promise of understanding and support. Relief immediately reflected on the boy's face, as if an invisible weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Madingo hesitated for a moment, his mind struggling to comprehend the generosity of this woman whom, just minutes ago, he had considered an ordinary victim. He never imagined that someone like Jessica, with her impeccable style and aura of power, could care. But something in her gaze encouraged him. He saw not just a successful woman, but someone willing to listen to his story. Jessica extended her hand, her fingers delicate yet firm, offering not just physical support, but an emotional connection that they both needed. He took a deep breath. Uncertainty still lingered, but hope began to take root in his heart. You're not going to turn me in to the police? Madingo asked, his voice trembling and unsure. His whole life had been marked by distrust, and he didn't know how to handle this new reality. No, Madingo. I won't. Jessica replied, now smiling with warmth radiating from her. I want you to know that I'm here to help, not to judge you. You don't have to go through this alone. The decision was like a light igniting in the depths of the boy's heart. He finally took a step forward, and without realizing it, his small hands met hers, in a touch that symbolized a new beginning. The connection was instant, as if two lonely souls had finally found each other in a chaotic universe. With Madingo's hand holding hers, Jessica realized she was about to embark on an unexpected journey. It wasn't just about recovering her purse or fixing a mistake, it was about rewriting their stories, both hers and his. With newfound determination, she decided that this would be an opportunity to do something meaningful, something that could transform not just their day but the lives they led. "Let's find a safe place for you and your sister," Jessica suggested, her gaze firm yet gentle. "Then we can talk about what you need. I'm here to help." Medingo, feeling enveloped by a wave of relief and gratitude, began to share his story. He talked about his sister, Clara, who was sick, and how the lack of food and medicine had led them to desperate situations. As he spoke, Jessica listened intently, absorbing every word, her heart tightening with each revelation. She could feel the pain and struggle that the boy carried, and for the first time, the loneliness that had once accompanied her felt a little lighter. Together, they started walking down the busy avenue, but now they were no longer alone. Jessica noticed that as they moved away from the chaos of the shops and the hurried glances of people, a new perspective was forming before her. It was a path of hope, where compassion could forge unexpected bonds and heal invisible wounds. As they walked, the city around them seemed to come alive anew. The sounds of cars, the buzz of people, and even the warmth of the sun became part of a symphony that now included Medingo. He spoke of the dreams he still had, even amidst the despair, and Jessica began to dream alongside him, envisioning a future where she could make a difference. With each step they took, the barriers between them began to dissolve. What had started as a tumultuous encounter was now transforming into an unexpected alliance. Jessica felt that by helping Medingo, she was also helping herself understand her own loneliness, and that connection was growing into something more powerful than any fame or wealth could offer. That sunny afternoon, as they walked together toward an uncertain future, Jessica and Medingo discovered that even in the most difficult circumstances, hope can blossom, and that sometimes true strength lies in the ability to extend a hand and say, "I'm here for you." Jessica led Medingo through the city streets, the sun still shining brightly but now with a different warmth. The rhythm of her heart pulsed in tune with the hope that was emerging as they approached the boy's home. The path was familiar to Medingo, but for Jessica, each step was a journey of discovery, a step toward a reality she had never contemplated up close. When they reached a small brick building, Jessica noticed the worn entrance, with peeling paint and a garden that seemed to have been forgotten by time. It was a simple place, but the way Medingo looked at it revealed that it was a home, even amid the struggle. He led her to a creaking wooden door, which opened to reveal a modest yet welcoming space, where the walls told stories of love and resilience. Soon, her eyes fixed on Clara, Medingo's sister, sprawled on an old sofa, covered by a blanket. The girl looked so fragile, as if a strong breeze could carry her away. Her face was pale, and fever gave her a feverish glow, a testament to the suffering that surrounded her. Jessica felt a tightness in her heart at the sight of that child, so vulnerable and in need of help. "Clara!" Medingo exclaimed, rushing to the sofa. "Look, I brought someone who can help us." Jessica approached, her gaze gentle and welcoming. She knelt beside the sofa, placing a hand gently on the girl's forehead, which felt warm to the touch. Clara's eyes slowly opened, and despite her weakness, she smiled at Medingo, a smile that spoke more than words could express. "Hi, Clara. I'm Jessica," she said, her voice sweet and soothing. "I'm here to help you." Jessica's presence seemed to bring a bit of relief to the tension-filled atmosphere. She stood up and, with determination, went to the kitchen, where she began searching for something she could prepare. The space was small, but there was an air of care, with utensils neatly arranged and a lingering aroma of spices in the air. With a bit of creativity, she decided to make a warm, comforting soup that could warm not just their bodies but also the hearts of that family. As the water boiled, Jessica searched the pantry and found some vegetables and rice. With agile hands, she began chopping the ingredients, imagining how pleasant it would be to bring a bit of normalcy to Clara and Medingo's lives. The sound of the knife cutting through the vegetables resonated in the kitchen, blending with the distant murmur of the city outside. That moment was precious, a pause amid the chaos they faced. Medingo watched with bright eyes, a mix of curiosity and gratitude. He was used to seeing people pass through his life without caring, but here was Jessica, dedicated and genuine. The transformation in the environment was palpable. The worry and despair that had once hung over them were slowly dissipating, giving way to an atmosphere of hope and warmth. After a few minutes, Jessica served the steaming soup into a bowl. She brought it over to Clara, who looked at her with anticipation. "This will help you feel better," Jessica assured her, smiling encouragingly. Medingo helped his sister sit up a little, holding her hand as she tasted the soup. Her expression lit up, and Jessica felt a wave of happiness wash over her as she saw the smile rekindle on the girl's face. "You're an amazing cook," Clara exclaimed, her eyes shining with gratitude. Jessica couldn't help but smile. Through a simple gesture, like making soup, She was creating a bond, a connection that transcended the barriers of her former life. While Clara ate, Jessica took the opportunity to fetch the medicine she had brought with her. In her bag, she had a small box of medications she had purchased for emergencies. It was an impulsive gesture, but now it proved essential. She explained to Medingo how it should be administered, showing that care extended beyond just feeding but included love and attention in all aspects. In that small home of Medingo and Clara, Jessica realized that her success, her achievements, and everything she had accomplished in her professional life meant little if she couldn't make a difference in someone's life. The connection forming in that moment was more valuable than any award or recognition she had ever received. She was transforming from a mere observer of life into an active participant, and this new role brought her deep and genuine happiness. As the day turned to night and the sky filled with stars, the atmosphere in the house changed completely. Clara and Medingo's laughter mingled with the aroma of the warm soup, and Jessica felt she had found a new purpose. The loneliness that had once accompanied her now felt like a distant memory, replaced by a human warmth pulsing in her heart. She knew there was still much to be done, but for that moment, what mattered was that they were together, supporting each other amid adversity. And as she looked at the faces illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp, Jessica felt an inner peace, the certainty that she had chosen the right path. Life, after all, was about connecting with others and transforming pain into hope together. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, as the gentle night light enveloped the small house where Jessica, Medingo, and Clara were together. After hours of conversation and laughter, the heavy atmosphere that had once lingered over them had dissipated, replaced by a feeling of belonging and unity. Medingo had helped Jessica understand his sister's situation, and in turn, Jessica had brought relief and hope to that family. As Jessica cleared the table after the meal, she looked at Medingo and Clara, noticing the sparkle in the boy's eyes. He was laughing with his sister, their laughter ringing like music in the silence of the night. Jessica had never imagined that she could feel such joy in such a simple place. The weight of the world felt less intense, as if the solidarity she had created with them had built a barrier against sadness. "Thank you for everything, Jessica," Medingo exclaimed, his face lit up with gratitude. The words carried a profound meaning. As for him, this was not just an act of kindness, it was a life-changing moment. He felt seen, heard, and for the first time in a long while, hopeful. Deep inside, Jessica felt a transformation. What had started as a chaotic day, marked by fear and despair, had turned into a moment of clarity. She realized that her life was full of material goods and professional success, but she had always lacked something, a true purpose. Looking at the two of them, she understood that real wealth wasn't in possessions but in the connections we create and the lives we touch. With her heart warmed by this new perspective, Jessica decided she needed to do more. She wanted to use her influence and resources not just to help Medingo and Clara but to reach out to others in difficult situations, just like them. The idea blossomed within her, a mission that filled her with determination. It was no longer just about being a successful businesswoman. She wanted to be an agent of change, someone who could inspire others to come together for the greater good. "I would like to help more people like you," she said, her voice firm and full of conviction. "We can organize a group to offer support to struggling families. Together, we can make a difference." Medingo and Clara looked at her, surprised but with a glimmer of hope in their eyes. For them, Jessica was no longer just a woman who had helped in a crisis, she had become a friend and an ally. Her proposal was like a beacon in the darkness, illuminating a path that had once seemed impossible. Jessica felt the energy in the room shift. What had once felt like a desperate situation was now a new opportunity. She realized that despite all the challenges still ahead, she had people by her side who were willing to fight. What had started as a robbery had transformed into a new friendship, an unexpected bond that could create a lasting impact. As they talked about plans and ideas, Jessica couldn't help but think of the stories yet to come. Every new life she could touch would be a new opportunity to change the world, a new chance to plant seeds of hope. The day was coming to an end, but for Jessica, Medingo, and Clara, it was just the beginning of something extraordinary. She smiled at the thought of a future where kindness and generosity spread like wildfire. The connection she had with Medingo and Clara motivated her to find ways to reach out to those in need. And as the night wrapped the city in its starry cloak, Jessica felt she had finally found her true path. With a new purpose pulsing in her heart, she knew that life had much to offer, and that love and empathy were the greatest treasures one could seek. And so, what had begun in the midst of misfortune transformed into a story of friendship, hope, and the powerful belief that together, they could make a difference.